Good afternoon, folks. My name is Will Revem, and coming to you live from the OpenShift Partner Theater here at Red Hat Summit. I am with an organization called CloudBees, and I'm a solution architect, and today I'm going to be talking about CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise on OpenShift. So, now Jenkins is the #1 CI/CD tool in the open source community. It's been around for a while now. It has become something of a standard when it comes to CI/CD automation. It's pretty well known. I won't spend a lot of time talking about Jenkins just because this is well-trod ground. Suffice it to say that CloudBees is the Jenkins company. So what is the power of Jenkins really, though, is the Jenkins community. Jenkins has a pluggable architecture, so we really encourage folks to create plugins to connect their favorite software, their favorite source control tools, and various other kinds of tools to Jenkins. As of last count, we had over 1,400 plugins. That number increases every day. Not sure what the latest figure is, but I expect that to keep growing. So. There are some challenges, though. When we talk about Jenkins in an enterprise context, we run into a couple of anti-patterns that kind of develop organically as organizations start to use Jenkins. So, the first pattern, or anti-pattern, we might say, the first stab at using Jenkins in an organization usually consists of one or more teams in an organization standing up an open source Jenkins master and beginning to create jobs and to build on Jenkins. This results in something that we could, the name we've given this anti-pattern is Jenkins sprawl. And the reason it's an anti-pattern is because there's a lot of repeated work. There's a lot of repeated effort and therefore wasted effort, as each team is essentially reinventing various wheels as they're getting Jenkins going and getting their pipelines and their jobs going. So this usually leads to the second anti-pattern, which is something we call skyscraper Jenkins. Skyscraper Jenkins happens when somebody says, hey, we've got all these Jenkins masters, everybody's kind of doing their own thing, it's the Wild West, we're repeating all this effort, it's not very efficient, it's not very manageable, there's not a lot of visibility into what's going on in our Jenkins environment, so let's bring everybody together on one Jenkins master. And I see some heads nodding, yeah. Most folks that have used Jenkins in an enterprise context have encountered this. We have one customer actually that has 40,000, that's 40,000 jobs on a single Jenkins master. And okay, you know what I'm talking about. This is an organization that's very capable. They have a lot of great engineers and a lot of great engineering minds. But they've discovered what most of our customers have discovered, which is that Jenkins at that kind of scale, a single master at that kind of scale, is not really manageable. They're talking to us about things like, oh, how can we tune our garbage collection to collect old jobs faster and free up some memory? And we're like, okay, really what you need to do is split this up. So this is where CloudBees comes in. What we want is, each of these two anti-patterns tries to achieve something, and in doing so, it fails to achieve the other thing, right? Really, there are two things we want to achieve. We want manageability and central visibility, but we also want scalability and autonomy at the team level. And this is where CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise comes in. So the way CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise works is that you have what's known as CloudBees Jenkins Operations Center. This is a Jenkins master that's modified to manage other Jenkins masters. It's a kind of a master of masters is what we like to say. So the CloudBees Jenkins Operations Center allows you to create Jenkins masters so you can go back to that initial organic model of a master per team or a master per project or something like that. But you can do it in a way, you can hook it up to that operations center so that it is centrally visible and centrally manageable. Now, when we talk about OpenShift, things get interesting because now with OpenShift and with making use of the Jenkins Kubernetes plugin, what we can do is we can actually spin these masters up very quickly and very easily. And we can fully automate the creation of a new managed master, is what we like to call these masters that are managed by the operations center. So we can create a new managed master using OpenShift. And we're just simply spinning up a pod and running some configuration scripts, configuring it, connecting it back to the operations center. And we can also make use of things like dynamically created agents. So this is something that you can also do in kind of the in the non-OpenShift world. If you're running Jenkins on VMs, you can dynamically create agents using Docker. We can use a very similar functionality to dynamically create agents, except this time they're managed by Kubernetes and, on OpenShift. So what does this benefit? Well, as I said, what this does is this CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise really achieves the two things that we're trying to achieve both in the Jenkins sprawl anti-pattern and in the skyscraper Jenkins anti-pattern. We're achieving central manageability and visibility, but we're also achieving we're decentralizing that management to some extent. We're centralizing the visibility, and we have the option of centralizing management. But when it comes to things like plugins, each individual team can install its own suite of plugins. It can configure Jenkins how it needs to configure Jenkins. So what you get with Jenkins on top, or excuse me, what you get with CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise on top of these great enterprise features that are not available in the open source version, you also get CloudBees support. So CloudBees engineers contribute about 80% of the code to the open source Jenkins project. In short, we are the company that facilitates the ongoing development of Jenkins, much like Red Hat facilitates the ongoing development of Linux and Kubernetes and all these other great projects that Red Hat is involved with. And our CTO is Kosuke Kawaguchi, or KK for short. KK was the engineer at Sun Microsystems who developed Jenkins. Initially, it was just an under-the-desk project, and it was known as Hudson in those days. At some point, Jenkins was forked from the original Hudson project and became Jenkins that we know today. And as I mentioned, already hit that data point. Okay, so we have, in addition to support from our great support engineers, we also have things such as online training. We have a great portal for that. We also have an amazing global consulting professional services team that can help you get going with CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise and ensure that you're successful with that. And we also have a Jenkins certification. So when we're talking about CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, the key phrase that I want to hammer home to you today is simplified management. Okay, so as I mentioned, because we have this central operations center that is managing all of our Jenkins masters, we are able to see at a glance what our Jenkins environment looks like, while also preserving the autonomy that we get from having a master per team architecture. In addition, we also make use of the Blue Ocean interface. We kind of extend that a little bit into creating a very simplified experience for creating a team. If you want more detail about that, we have a demo playing on a loop in our booth. I won't have time to get to a demo today, but if you're interested in that, please stop by the booth and I'll be happy to walk you through it. So as I mentioned, CloudBees Jenkins Operations Center, we also have a number of features available in CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, and some of these are pretty essential to really doing Jenkins in a scalable enterprise way. One of those is pipeline checkpoints. So let's say I'm running a build, and let's say my build and test stages take 2 hours, right? And then following that, I have a deploy stage. This is a simplified model, I realize, but for the sake of argument, let's say that's my architecture, And let's say I do a build and test, but then my deployment fails just because of some transient network error or a DNS server goes down. In other words, it fails for some reason that has nothing to do with the input to the build. It has nothing to do with the changes to the source code that triggered the build or whatever event triggered the build. It really just has to do with something totally random. I don't want to necessarily rerun my entire pipeline. Really, I want to just start from that deploy phase and just deploy it because I know it builds, I know that it passes its tests. And so this checkpoint feature allows me to do that. It allows me to define a checkpoint and then replay a pipeline from that checkpoint. Another great feature we have here available in CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise is cross-team collaboration. So I mentioned we have all these masters and they're centrally managed by an operations center. Well, that operations center can actually act as a message broker. And so you can set up a publish-subscribe model between pipelines and even between pipelines on different masters. So I can have a pipeline on one master that let's say it's a pipeline for a framework that a bunch of my applications use. So I make some changes to that framework. Now I want to notify all of the applications that depend on that framework that, hey, there's a new version available. You might want to pull in the changes and build them and test them against your application code. And so all we have to do with this cross-team collaboration feature, because we have this operations center, we can essentially just publish a message to operations center that says, hey, this pipeline built. And then any pipeline that has that framework as a dependency, let's say, can define a trigger so that any time that event gets emitted, it will trigger a new build for that pipeline. And that's really just one use case. There are lots of use cases for that because this is really just a generic pub sub event model that can be used for all kinds of things. Another great feature of CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise is that we have a very granular security model. So we extend the open source Jenkins security model. We have a lot more permission bits. You can really go crazy with the role-based access control that you can create. Now, this kind of gives you an idea of what of the scope of this RBAC plugin. I know this is a little bit difficult to read, but essentially these columns are each just permission bits, and then the rows are different roles that check boxes for the permission bits that they want to enable for that role. And what this allows us to do is things like we can combine this RBAC plugin with like, let's say, an LDAP plugin, and we can map an LDAP group onto one of these roles, and then we can kind of control who has access to what at the LDAP level, and we can kind of delegate a lot of that to LDAP while also getting this kind of granular security in Jenkins. So another really killer feature of the enterprise product is the CloudBees Assurance program. So one issue with using any open source project, especially one like Jenkins that has such a huge ecosystem of plugins and has so many different options and choices out there, as a user of Jenkins, it can be really easy to get decision fatigue, right? Like, which of these plugins do I use? There's 5 Git plugins. Which one is the one that I want to use? Well, the CloudBees Assurance program is designed to kind of give you an opinionated way of looking at all of the plugin ecosystem so that you can make quick decisions about which plugins to use, because we actually go out into the community and verify certain plugins and say, yes, okay, these are the plugins that we recommend that you use, and we will distribute them. We actually distribute them to you. And we also provide something called the Beekeeper Upgrade Assistant, which allows us to manage the upgrade. It allows us to take advantage of this CloudBees Assurance program to upgrade our plugins in a very controlled sort of way. And of course, all these plugins are browsable on our website. So, as I said, I won't have time for a demo today, but I just want to kind of reiterate that CloudBees is the Jenkins company. We are the Jenkins experts. We are fully committed to the health and well-being of the Jenkins community as an open source community. And we believe that CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, which runs on Red Hat OpenShift, complements OpenShift very well and is a great solution for folks that want to run Jenkins on OpenShift in a scalable and manageable way. And as I said, CloudBees is all about software at the speed of ideas. That's our motto. That's kind of all the material I have for you. Thank you very much for your time.